welcome back to Ladies Who Listen, the music podcast by women for women. Today I am joined by a very special guest. This is my friend Sarah Taylor.
Hiya.
And she is a music journalist for the Mancunion in Manchester. So, hello Sarah, thank you for coming in.
That's alright.
So, I know you do other roles in the music industry, so apart from the Mancunion, what other things do you really get up to?
So my main kind of role at the moment is I'm a music editor at the Mancunion, so that kind of involves like checking over everyone's articles that they're submitting and like making sure we can arrange opportunities with PR. There's a lot of emailing and admin kind of involved with that and running weekly section meetings. But aside from that, I do quite a lot of freelancing, and I'm also a regular contributor to a few other publications such as Gigwise and DIY. So that's kind of my main music journey.
So, how did you start in the industry? How did you get into it?
Well, it all kind of started in lockdown. I've always been passionate about music, and like I love listening to music. I do it all the time, whether I'm asleep or whatever, on the bus or like listening to records. But I was just a bit bored, and I thought to myself, do you know what, I want to get involved in like doing some writing or whatever. And I thought, I've got quite a good knowledge of music. Like I'm not in a band, I don't play an instrument, but like my kind of way of getting into that, I guess, is through writing, because I think it's something I'm quite good at. So I started writing an article. It was actually a review of Nick Cave's album Carnage, and I sent that off to the Mancunion. They were really happy with it. And then I just kept doing kind of regular album and track reviews, and I did a few interviews over Zoom, because obviously that was like at a time when you couldn't really do anything in person. But as things have gone on and circumstances have changed, I've started doing more kind of live reviews and doing more stuff in person, which is better, and it kind of builds your confidence with doing that. And then I sort of branched out and I started writing for like one of my friends' blogs, Music Is To Blame, and I did a bit of editing there. And then I started branching out more into like national publications, and one day maybe the dream NME.
So that's like the goal, hopefully. Is that what you want to do full time then? Is that like the goal now?
Yeah, so I think it would either be music journalism or music PR, so kind of the reverse of what I'm doing, because I'm used to kind of dealing with, getting sent pictures and people's like, press releases and things, so I'd be writing them and doing that.
So how does it typically go? Like, how do you like write an article? Do you so you go to gigs and stuff and then usually write a review, or you listen to an album and then review it?
Yeah, so I find that when I'm doing album reviews, like I'll kind of listen to it a few times, just doing like other stuff casually before I then like kind of pick out what I think stands out. I think like when I first started doing it, I had a tendency to be like, I've got to write about every track, but now I tend to just focus on like either the things that stand out or like thematically can kind of group things together and whatever. In terms of live reviewing, the first live review I did was when there was the COVID pilot festival in Sefton Park, so it was like Blossoms and Zuzu playing. And that was a bit of a weird one, because obviously there was so many restrictions, like masks and it was the first like not socially distanced thing, but it was still very like regimented and showing you the tests and everything. So I was a bit of a square, and I was like, I'm going to try and do everything by the book, and like, I'm just going to kind of stand here and observe what's going on. But like the more experienced I've got with it, and I've realised what's required of me, not saying I particularly go like mad, like get absolutely smashed or whatever, but like I know I can enjoy it, and I can meet up with my friends and have a drink and like go to the pub after or whatever. Like it's not always as strict as you would think.
I suppose it adds a lot to the experience as well, like just enjoying it for what it is, and not like having a set in mind what you're going to write about, what you're there for, like just going along with it, seeing what the vibes are, like what the show is about, like how they're putting it on and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I think like my favourite kinds of reviews and articles to read are often quite like fan-led. Like I think going in and having the experience of like any other audience member or fan like often adds a lot more, and especially like if I'm reviewing a band that I really like, I find it so much like I can write it like that because I know what I'm going to write about, and like
well, I know we've always been very passionate about going to gigs. We've been to a few gigs together. So I know I've never really like thought about writing reviews. I suppose I don't listen like the way you do, like you pick out instruments, you see what kind of themes are going on, like I'm just there for the vibes, I'm just listening to the lyrics and enjoying it and stuff like that. Who's been your favourite artist so far that you've done a review on?
That I've reviewed? I think like my sort of pinnacle at the moment was I got to do the 1975's War Child show at Gorilla, which was massive for me. Like, because I was desperate for tickets for that, and I've been to like all the tours and stuff, but obviously seeing them in such an intimate venue was really cool. And like the way that happened as well, like I wrote that for Gigwise, and the editor kind of messaged me and reached out to me and was like, I know you're a deranged fan girl, like, do you want to do it? But I think that's like, I thought that was quite sweet, because I think like putting that fan perspective onto something like that, like you're going to get a better piece than you would if it was someone who didn't have like much knowledge of it and was just kind of going for the hell of it. But that was like really special for me, and I've done like a few interviews that I've really enjoyed as well. I recently interviewed Busted, which was a bit of
so your little teaser for that on your story.
Although I do think I might have embarrassed myself when I was like, your CD was the first album I got from Woolies.
Woolworths. Oh, what a time.
What a throwback.
So did you find that as a woman it was harder for you to like break into the industry than it would have been if you were a man?
I think because my route into music journalism has been student media, not necessarily because it's quite balanced. But then there have been moments, I think, kind of, for example, when I'm going to do like a live review or something, or I'm dealing with, or even sometimes in like the meetings that I'm running for the writers, you do sometimes get kind of your typical sort of, because we were joking about film bros earlier, but like your sort of music bro, like kind of, and because I like a lot of music, and like I do love a lot of pop music, and I think people who slag off pop music are just boring, and like you know, you're not better than
pop
someone
music
for not enjoying
because
it.
It's popular, like that's why people like it. It's fun.
Exactly. But I think like you do sometimes get guys who like, oh, I'm gonna outsmart you, like I know more about Radiohead, blah,
like
blah,
a superiority
like,
complex, and it's like, calm down, like you don't have to be the know all and end all or something to enjoy it, like you can just be a casual listener. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's so frustrated.
Also, like in terms of going to gigs sometimes, because I'll like come on my own, or I'll have like one of my friends as my plus one, and like we have, you know, we're like young women, and we have quite a girly style and whatever, and like quite often I'm reviewing bands that I am like a fan of, so I might have a t-shirt
so you want to get dressed
on.
up and look good for it, like you want to enjoy it yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes like the security or whoever's on the door can be a bit hesitant about like, oh, are you sure you're here as press? Are you sure you're here to review it? And I'm like, yeah, I am.
I can't even imagine that. Like, it must be so frustrating. Like,
it is,
from a professional point of view as well, like, that's what your job is, that's what you're there for, and then they're still so reluctant to believe you.
I recently read like a really good book by one of my favourite like music writers, Hannah Ewins. She does a lot for like Rolling Stone and Vice, and her book Fangirls, it's just so good. She's kind of got into all these fandoms and got these like, have you read it or if you heard
I've heard of it, and like I know what you're on about. I think I've seen like people like talk about it on Twitter and stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, I do need to read that.
Because like she writes about it with so much like respect for that kind of thing, but like it is true that like without women and without like young girls, young fans, that like a lot of these bands and artists wouldn't have the success.
No, like when you think back to like the original fangirl, probably like the Beatlemania and stuff, like they like the women, the fans that supported the Beatles, they probably projected their fame so much.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And I think that's the same with like a lot of popular bands, but it's still like the opinion of a fangirl is so like sexist. I think like crazed female, like hysterical, like obsessive, but it's just not true.
Yeah.
Like I consider myself a fangirl for like a lot of bands, but you know, it doesn't really fall into that. But then if it does, like who cares? Like teenage girls are allowed to love what they want to love and not be judged for it.
Exactly. I think like it applies to so many bands and genres and things, whether you're talking about like pop bands and like One Direction and like boy bands, or emo bands, or I think.
But I've been through all. I think I've fell into every like category there, to be honest.
Every fangirl phase.
Every fangirl phase. Have you experienced any sexism, like, within the industry so far?
I mean, I'd say, like, I guess we sort of covered that a bit earlier with what I was saying with, like, sometimes people think, oh, you might not know as much as me and blah, 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 and it's like, I do, like, I'm aware of, like, this band and this artist and whatever, but yeah, I'd say nothing, like, severe.
No.
So far, but I think also because a lot of what I'm doing is with people of a similar age to me.
Yeah.
Whereas I think maybe if I was working somewhere, like, or like I've seen kind of, you know, horror stories and whatever on Twitter, because I do follow, like, a lot of my mutuals are, like, people in that kind of industry. I think, like, especially maybe with older men in more kind of senior positions, like, that tends to be more common with that. I've just been lucky so far that, like, my friends that are, like, guys that are into that stuff are not like that at all.
No, not, like, won't put you down about it or anything. I think, like, I was talking to Georgia, our guest, who was on Tuesday, and she was saying, like, she has had the same experience where, like, in Liverpool especially, the music industry is quite close-knit. So if anything like that was to go on, like, people find about it, like, immediately, and they're quick to, like, cancel people and, like, remove them from the industry as well. So I think, is it like that in Manchester?
I would say to some extent. There are, like, certain labels and groups that I've heard things about. Well. It's probably not a good idea for me to name names, but, like, where, you know, I'm a bit, like, aware of, like, I'm a bit wary of them from things I've heard from other people or, like, on Twitter or whatever. Twitter seems to be the main news source at the moment.
I find everything out on Twitter, to be fair.
But I do think, like, when people get a wind of stuff, like, and there's a lot of people, like, you know, people will kind of fade into the background and whatever, and they will, if they're found out, people are not going to work with them, and the career's going to decline and whatever.
I think the music industry is getting a lot better at that, to be fair. Like, obviously a lot of industries, like the film industry, are still falling behind and stuff, but I do think, like, the music industry is a lot quicker to, like, cancel people for things that have been found out. Like, it's very quickly spread as well because of the fan bases.
Yeah.
So, like, you find out a lot of things about artists, like, rapidly. Or even people in the industry, or, like, local bands and stuff. Like, obviously I've seen a lot myself, like, on Instagram, people sharing stories about, like, local bands from Liverpool.
Oh, yeah.
They've been completely condemned from the industry, and then so it is successful.
As they should.
Work, as they should. What's the most positive experience thing you've had so far?
Most positive, like, one of my kind of bucket list things was going to, like, Reading and Leeds Festival. So I got like a press pass for Leeds last year, which was amazing because it was, like, Arctic Monkeys, 1975. Megan Thee Stallion, Fontaines, like, so many good bands and artists on. And I think, again, with that, I kind of just threw myself into that. I didn't get, like, a +1, I didn't have, like, a team with me, so I was, like, I'd gone off on this coach, like, camping on my own, and it was such, like, a massive deal, and I was, like, a bit worried and a bit nervous about it, but now I feel like I'm so glad I've done it, because I feel like I could do anything now, do you know, in a metaphorical sense, but, like...
Well, I think that's, like,
it was just
even
so
just
cool.
The experience of, like, the journey of it, like, getting there yourself, like, doing things yourself, like, a lot of people would not be brave enough to do that.
Yeah.
So, especially doing it for something, like, for work, I suppose, like, having the opportunity to do that is, like, so cool in itself, that you've managed to do both at the same time, like, two different challenges.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, not to say that I was on my own the whole time, because, like, I had friends who were there as well, and I met up with different people and whatever, but it was just, like, a really cool thing to do. And, like, something I'll never forget.
Yeah, oh, that's brilliant.
I think a lot of the time as well with reviewing gigs and events, like, quite often you do just have to go on your own, so it's, like, it's such a different experience, but I think it's made me more confident in the sense that, like, I can, like, still enjoy it and like, chat to people and whatever, and
I want to go to gigs a lot more as well myself. Like, I think the whole, like, going to, like, gigs especially, usually, like, oh, like, do you want to get a ticket for this? And then if they say no, like, you don't really get one yourself. Like, I'm trying to do that, because there's a lot of artists that I've always wanted to see that I've never really had the courage to go to alone, especially if it's a bigger, like, stadium or whatever. But, like, I have been to, like, some smaller shows by myself. Like, I saw Matt Maltese in 2019 by myself in It was in not the Jacaranda basement, but the
Phase 1.
Phase 1. It was in Phase 1. It was such a tiny
show there.
So like close knit. Like afterwards, like everyone had a chat with him, and like it was so casual and chill and like half empty. Like one of the best experiences I've had with like one of my favourite artists. So that was really cool.
Did you get to like chat to him? Was that like at the merch stand or something? Or
yeah, like he was just sat there signing records, but like hardly anyone was there. Like he was just at the bar as well, like talking with us.
Yeah, sometimes I think stuff like that is more magical. I do think I do prefer small venues.
Yeah, I do.
Like I do love a lot of like popular bands. And they tend to do arenas and stuff, and it's amazing. But I think when you can like go to something that's quite intimate, you're gonna remember it more, or it's more kind of like special.
Especially like you got to see 1975 at Gorilla, which I'm really, really jealous of. I was fighting for tickets for that. I was so jealous.
Fighting for my life.
Fighting for your life on Ticketmaster.
That's like, I feel I've gone on about that quite a lot already, but like it was just fab. Yeah. And like, because he had like the whole first album and it was nostalgic,
you know. How many times have you seen them now?
Not as much, like maybe like 8 or 9 or something.
Maybe 8 or 9.
I feel like, because I follow a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm on my 50th show or whatever, and I'm like...
That's insane to me.
Yeah.
I've seen them 4 times now, and that to me is like, every time I see them, I'm like, oh, it's so special and magical, like the first time again.
Yeah.
And finally, to end on, what inspired you to get into the industry?
I think just like my enjoyment of music and kind of like a lot of the friendships that I've got like often are like not just solely based on music but you know like solidified through like having a like mutual passion for a band or like going to gigs together. Like I love going to gigs as it is. I go to them for fun as well as like work now. When I think back to kind of like my longest friendships or a lot of the people I've met at uni, a lot of it has been like through that.
Yeah.
So it is just like a big part of my life, and like I do find myself chatting about it all the time, and like sometimes like that can be like in quite a pretentious way and quite an analytical way and whatever, and I was like, do you know what? And I do English lit at uni, so my brain works like that. It's obsessed with finding deeper meanings and listening for reading for every little like hint and whatever. So I think those two things combined, I was like, do you know what, maybe this is something I can do. Like I can write about music and analyse it, because I can't write music, like I can't play something.
But you're still involved in the industry, so you're being passionate about it, so that's your way in.
And it's going pretty well so far, so
I'm really happy for you, and you're doing really well.
Thank you.
Proud of you.
Thanks so much.
And then to end on, the song of the week chosen by Sarah is $20 by Boy Genius. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been a pleasure.
All right. It's been lovely. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. So we'll catch you next time.